Before we begin tonight's discussion, I want to start by stressing the fact that suffering is a very real and painful part of life, and that I don't intend to downplay or make light of the pain that suffering can cause. Throughout studying suffering, I came across some startling statistics that were really shocking to me. The Global Slavery Index in 2018 estimated that roughly 40.3 million individuals are currently caught in modern slavery, with 71% of those being female and 1 in 4 being children. In 2017, 40 million people struggled with hunger in the United States. 1 in 6 American children may not know where their next meal is coming from. Again, that's American children. Suffering is a very real issue, and everyone has to deal with it. Every world religion has to answer for suffering, and Christianity is no different. Let's look at an example of a horrific suffering, the Holocaust, and how two sisters were able to find hope in their hopeless situation. Someone who I was researching and learning about the trials of suffering a lot recently is a person named Corrie ten Boom. Corrie was a Dutch Christian during World War II. Her and her family helped many Jews escape the Holocaust concentration camps by creating a safe room hidden behind a false wall in her home that could hide as many as 6 people at one time. Sadly, their home was raided and the Ten Boom family were all arrested. Corrie and her sister were separated from the rest of their family and sent to a concentration camp called Ravensbrück, which was a women's labor camp. Corrie's sister, Betsy, ultimately died days before the camp was raided and the prisoners were rescued, but Corrie lived. Not only did she live through the horrors of being in a concentration camp and the loss of her family, but she lived to be the age of 91, spreading a message of love, hope, and if you can believe it, forgiveness, saying some amazing quotes such as, happiness isn't something that depends on our surroundings. It's something we make inside ourselves. Happiness isn't something that depends on our surroundings. How could she say something like that when her surroundings were a bed that was not even really able to be considered a bed? It was really just hay and straw that was infested with fleas. Say something like that. Another quote from Corey. Now I know in my experience that Jesus' light is stronger than the biggest darkness. The biggest darkness? I can imagine it's harder to find a bigger darkness than the Holocaust. Yet Corey and her sister in this situation said that Jesus' light was stronger than the biggest darkness. And there is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still. I can imagine Corrie felt like she was in a pretty deep pit at times in the Holocaust. Yet she said that God's love was not deeper still. How does someone who went through something as horrific as the Holocaust have such a positive outlook? How do we have a similar outlook that Corrie had when we face suffering in our own lives? For Corrie, she found her hope in God. Corrie and Betsy were able to sneak in pages of the Bible with them when they were sent to the concentration camp, and they would read them to the girls that were in the same barracks with them. The women found peace in the fact that Jesus experienced suffering like they did. In the book Corrie wrote about their experience in the concentration camp called The Hiding Place, she writes that Friday brings the humiliation of medical inspection, for which the women must be naked. Corrie wonders how the guards can be so cruel as to laugh at the stick-thin legs and hunger-bloated stomachs which proceed before them. During a perfunctory examination, Corrie has a comforting realization that Jesus Christ hung naked on the cross, while Corey stood naked in front of men that had the power to kill her at any second. She had the realization that Jesus hung naked on the cross. The fact that Jesus felt the same pain and humiliation that Corey and Betsy felt caused the women to feel a comfort of not being alone. In John chapter 11, a verse stood out to me, although it is the shortest verse in the Bible. It brought a lot of comfort to me personally. It simply states that Jesus wept. While on earth, Jesus felt the pain of suffering and being human. While Jesus hung on the cross, he not only felt the excruciating pain of his injuries, but he also experienced the separation from God his Father. In Matthew 27:26, Jesus cried out from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Thankfully, the story doesn't end there. Through the death and resurrection of Jesus, God's ultimate plan to put an end to suffering was put into place. God says in Revelation 21:4, He, meaning God, will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, and former things are passed away. God ultimately plans to bring a day where there is no more suffering. It is through the hope that her temporary situation was not where her story would end. Corey was able to stand with her head held high, being thankful in her suffering in the concentration camp. I want to challenge us tonight to be open with each other because we're not alone in our suffering. So we should not hide our suffering because we're not alone in it. And hiding our suffering will do nothing to put an end to it. But if we're open with each other, we can help each other through it and help comfort each other and be there for each other. And if you need someone to talk to, I would love to talk. And I'm sure members of your small group feel the exact same way. So, as we go into tonight's discussion, please remember that you're not alone in your suffering.